Well, listen, everyone, I am super excited to welcome you back to the second half of Hacks and Hops. And as promised, if you liked the first half, I promise you that we have some amazing voices and industry experts who will continue this conversation. So in addition to kicking off this event, we have a very special speaker that is up next for you. And I think that some of you may know him. If not, this is going to be your first time being introduced to him. But he is a person that you need to know because he's an industry expert. His name is Etay Maor, and he is the Senior Director of Security Strategy at Cato Networks. Now, he is an industry-recognized cybersecurity researcher, and he's a keynote speaker. Previously, Etay was the Chief Security Officer for InstaSites, where he led strategic cybersecurity research and security services. Before that, Etay held numerous leadership and research positions as an executive security advisor at IBM, where he created and led breach response training and security research, and as head of FRSecure Cyber Threats Research Labs, where he managed malware research and intelligence terms, and was part of a cutting-edge security research and operations. Now, Etay is also a teacher. Matter of fact, not just any teacher, a professor at Boston College. He holds a BA in computer science and an MA in counterterrorism and cyber terrorism. Etay is a frequent featured speaker at major industry conferences, as well as he is often tapped by major news outlets for his astute commentary on insights into the cybersecurity news of the day. And guess what? We have him here, in addition to keep your eyes and your ears open because a basketball could be coming your way. And we don't want to get you plucked in the head. I think we have a few people who got one. All right? So with that being said, let's go ahead and make sure that Etay feels welcome. And how you can do that is by putting your hands together and welcoming Etay Maor.
Blood by Sepultura, but that didn't go through very well. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. My name is Etay Maor. As mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Security Strategy at Cato Networks. And this session is busting cybersecurity myths. So, yeah, a couple of the positions that I held were mentioned before. I'd like to mention another thing is that I actually started my career back in high school. I wasn't a very good student, but I was pretty good with computers, so I hacked into my school's database and changed my grades. My father, who was Department of Defense in Israel, we were living at Israel at the time, that's where I'm from, thought it was really funny. My mom was a teacher at that school. She didn't think it was funny at all, so I got punished. And of course, what I got punished, I had to teach other kids about computers, so I taught them how to hack into the school's database and change their grades. So that's kind of my history. I'm actually also very proud to say that today I live in Boston. I came from Boston to this event. But 86 till 88, I lived in St. Paul. So I actually took an Uber today. Yeah! I took an Uber today to see the house that I lived in and Highland School and the places I went to 37 years ago. So that was pretty exciting. This place didn't exist at the time. I think this is from Timberwolves are from 89, so I just left before. So very excited to be back here after almost 40 years. One more thing that I do is I'm part of a conference you may have heard of, FRSecurity, RSA conference. I used to work for FRSecurity, RSA conference, and I help choose the talks at that event. And this is one of the reasons for this presentation, Busting Cybersecurity Myths, because we're a large group of people who handle those presentations and choose them. But you go over these presentations every year, and sometimes you run into these cybersecurity myths and sayings that people take as complete truths. But they're really wrong if you actually look at the field and look what is happening. So we try to kind of like weave through the marketing campaigns and stuff that, although I come from a vendor, I'll tell you, a lot of vendors are saying all kinds of things. So I've gathered 3 cybersecurity myths that I want to bust by showing you actual examples of why they don't exist in real life. However, I had to add a 4th one. So with the time that we have at the end, I'd also like to jump and break another myth that I haven't seen yet, so I don't know if it's a myth, but I know that starting from this coming year and onward, every vendor in every security conference is going to have powered by generative AI, LLM in their booth. So I want to kind of tackle that before that even happens. So that's going to be the fourth one. Without any further delay, let's go into the first one. I really hate this myth because I hear it a lot. I even used to say it. I even used to believe in it. The attackers have to be right just once. The defenders have to be right all the time. I'm sure you heard this a million times. And before we even tackle this, let's get to the root of the problem. And I love this saying by Captain Jack Sparrow: the problem is not the problem is your attitude about the problem. I actually used this sentence in an argument with my wife a couple of months ago. Don't use that in an argument with your wife, ever. I think I had valid points, but that didn't help the conversation / argument / sleeping on the sofa later. But it is an issue when we talk about why it's not true that the attackers have to be right just once. And I think we see this all the time. If you look at articles about different events that happen, different breaches, you're going to see this problem manifested constantly. Let's take a look at a couple of examples, different highlights from breaches that happened in the last couple of years. You might have seen something like this: hackers breach Lineage OS servers via unpatched vulnerability. And you see something like this and you'll say, okay, unpatched vulnerabilities, right? That's the priority, that's the problem, that's why they got hacked. Then you'll read something like this: Colonial Pipeline was compromised because of passwords. Okay, so that's the problem. The passwords are the problem. Let's have strong passwords. That's what caused the breach, right? And I can go on, and I can show you more and more of these headlines talking about, okay, it's an insider threat, or maybe it's because of phishing, or maybe it's because of some bad coding that allowed for SQL injection. The problem I have with each one of these is they point to a single point of failure. And as you've also heard in presentations before me, that's not the case. When you have a breach, it's a complete collapse of all your security tools and internal processes. You think Colonial only had passwords to protect their network? Of course they had a SIM and an antivirus, anti-malware, they had a secure web gateway, they had a bunch of things. So maybe it's not only this compromised passwords. Why are we only talking about that? In fact, I decided to take an example of a ransomware attack and overlaid on the MITRE ATT&CK framework that I'm assuming most of you know. If you're not familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, it's simply a way to look at how attackers operate. It's a database of tactics and techniques. So on the top, from left to right, you have the different tactics that attackers use, from getting access into the network all the way to the impact. For each tactic, you have multiple techniques that they may use. And what I've highlighted here in red is the REvil ransomware gang and how they perform their attacks. So usually, again, mentioned in one of the previous presentations, you read about a breach over there when you're encrypted, right? That's when you learn about it, usually. But take a look at all the different steps the attackers have to take here. The attacker has to be right just once? No. The attacker has to be right here and here and here and here and here, actually everywhere, in order to reach that. So the attackers actually have to be right all the time. They have to overcome multiple security solutions. The defenders need to be right just once in order to detect, or perhaps even mitigate, or ultimately, if you can, stop and prevent the attack. But saying the attackers have to be right just once? No, I don't buy into that anymore. And I do have several memes in my presentations because that's how I like them. Yeah. We're bringing the same old thinking into a cloud world. We're bringing on-premise mind into a cloud fight. This thinking that we can solve the types of attacks that we're seeing today, and even more than the type of attacks, based on the networks that we have, the type of businesses that we're running, that we can solve it with an on-prem approach of different modules of security, of different on-prem devices, physical devices that you need to patch and update and correlate and have policies that will apply to all of them at the same time. That's not going to work. It isn't working, and that's why this myth is not true. This myth, however, is closely connected to the second one that I want to mention. And again, I know I'm coming from a vendor, and I know that there are a lot of vendors here. There are even more in other conferences that I go to. And they want you to buy everything that they have. So more security products means better security, right? Not really. This is a slide that I borrowed from Michael Fisher that kind of lays out the different security products that are out there for each security layer. Now, don't get me wrong. I completely agree that you have to have layered security. But if you look at the statistics, the different reports that come out, small to medium businesses use between 20 to 30 security solutions. Large enterprises use over 60 security products. And so you end up with something that's not even the whole list actually here. You end up with something that's extremely hard to manage. You know, it may be really cool for Hollywood to show a security operations center and you see the guy or girl sitting in front of 8 screens. It looks really good on TV. That person is crying during the day, maybe during the night as well. I know I used to. They're sitting in front of multiple solutions trying to understand and make sense out of all of it. How do I take my logs and go through them, remove the false positives, feed that into my endpoint? How do I update the SIM? And then I want also my anti-malware to do it. How do I update the firewall at the same time? We're taking smart cybersecurity people and we're turning them into security engineers in the sense of integration engineers. That's not what they signed up for. And if you ask me, that's also partially a contributor to the high burnout rate that we see, because we're dealing with a lot of stuff that's not the core stuff that we should be dealing with. How did we get there? Well, it used to be very easy to control your environment, right? 15, 20 years ago, a CISO would walk into his office, everything was under his domain. He was the king of that kingdom, and he could control everything. Today, it's very different, right? You do have your office, but you have branches. You have global branches. You have people working from home, especially since COVID, right? You have things that your company is dependent on that you have zero control, almost zero control over, like cloud applications. How do you control all of that? How do you secure all of that? It's a huge challenge. And in fact, I would even argue and say, we don't even know our own networks. There's a report that I generate, well, every quarter. I moved it to every 6 months now. I'm trying to push to once a year, but my manager won't let me be that lazy. In the report, I look into our networks that we manage for our clients. So Cato Networks, we are a SASE provider, Secure Access Service Edge, so we run the network and security for all our clients. Close to 2,000 organizations now, which is actually what brought me on board, because I was like, I'll have access to all the data. That's awesome. So I look at the networks of all our clients, and I try to find, aside from the anomalies, I try to find interesting information. And in the report, one of the things that I report about is the top 5 most used cloud applications for each one for our networks. And even as the person who creates this report, I will be the first to tell you that the top 5 is extremely boring, because it's almost always the same thing. It's Microsoft, it's Google, it's, who else was up there? Well, TeamViewer, they sometimes interchange. Sometimes it's Facebook is up there. Sometimes you have other things. But why is it that when I did this report for 2022 and looked at, if I remember correctly, 1.3 or 1.4 trillion network flows, I found over 1,200 applications that our customers were using. Out of those 1,200, number 23 in popularity, meaning in terms of how many network flows I've seen, was TikTok on corporate networks. So the question is, do you even know that that is happening on your network? I'm not even getting into the argument, is TikTok a malware or spyware designed by some government, or is it a safe thing that your kids can use? Why is this happening on your network? Why was number 200 and something, I don't remember the number, 200 and something out of 1,200 Tor networks? Do you even know that that is happening on your network? So we don't even understand our network well enough. And the more and more security products I would challenge, and I do challenge SOCs, I ask the SOC manager, every product that you add, is it adding strength or fat to your SOC? Are you adding more integrations and more processes that will never end? Or are you adding capabilities? There's another side effect to multiple security solutions, and it's product champions. It's not really good for the organization, because how many times have I heard, I go into an organization, okay, who manages that piece of equipment or that firewall. Oh, Dave left us, but it's all working, so we're not touching it. And you create these your product champions, but when they leave, all the knowledge is gone as well. Just trying to make sure that I'm good with time. OK. I want to show you an example from one of our prospects that turned now into a customer. This is a ransomware attack on a company that deals with chemicals. So you really don't want a lot of bad stuff happening. You don't want bad stuff happening to anybody, but that was especially sensitive. They experienced a ransomware attack. They called myself and the Cato team in to discuss, our capabilities, whatever. And I was really interested in how the attack happened. So I'm sitting there. They didn't even have a CISO. They had an IT manager. And I'm asking him about the ransomware attack. And he's saying, well, we experienced ransomware attack. It started by a phishing attack. They had a phishing email. Somebody clicked on the link. And I was like, hold on, stop 1 second. Don't you have an anti-phishing solution, something to monitor emails? He said, yeah. And I quote, he said, but they got lucky this time. OK. Continue. He said, OK, so the phishing email went in. Somebody clicked on it. When he clicked on it, it actually connected him to a malicious website outside of our network, obviously. And I said, hold on. Don't you have a secure web gateway? Don't you have something to stop, checks the popularity, checks the validity of URLs you go to? Yeah, but it went through. OK, continue. Through that website, it actually downloaded a piece of malware, which was the dropper for the ransomware. Like, wait, don't you have an and he said, don't stop me anymore. I was like, OK, I'm sorry. It's like the Israeli in me. I have to ask questions all the time. Yeah, we do have an antivirus and an anti-malware. We actually found the logs for this event about a month and a half after it happened. And this went out through the entire process of the ransomware attack. So once the attackers got a foot on the network, they installed Mimikatz, they used Cobalt Strike, and they ransomed. There were actually more than 2 weeks on their network. And they ransomed this organization on New Year's Eve, just to kind of put the cherry on top when nobody was in the office. They ransomed the company, and then all hell broke loose, right? They found themselves in that MITRE on the really right-hand side, your right-hand side. And so we're talking about the products and the security solutions that they had in place. And like I mentioned before, they had dozens of security tools. They have had all kinds of processes. The attackers went through all of them. And despite all of those security products, the network got ransomed, which really reminded me of a scene that I was traumatized as a kid when I saw. Anybody recognize which film this is from? Indiana Jones. Yeah, if you remember what happened to the guy who drank from the wrong cup, lives rent-free in my mind since I was a kid. But yeah, choosing, and I'm not talking specifically about products, but this architecture of multiple security products doesn't really work. I told you I have memes. This one usually ends with a happy ending where the guy gets a hug, but not really in my case. OK. Third and last myth before our bonus myth. Sophisticated threat actors use sophisticated tools. Don't get me wrong. You say 0 day, you won't be able to take me away from this stage for about 3 hours because I will be babbling and talking and very excited about it. Unfortunately, the majority of the attacks that we see don't utilize a 0 day. Yeah, sure, these things happen, and when they do, when you see the log4j, the MoveIts, there's actually some stuff that's happening right now that we're investigating with something that just came out yesterday. Yeah, they happen, but a lot of times, they just use conventional tactics, conventional techniques. And don't take my word for it. I want to show you what the criminals are saying about it. So I think I had two slides on this, but I might only have one here. The first one is from a presentation, I don't see the credit here, is from a session called 2 Weeks with a Russian Ransomware Cell by Brooke Chelmo. I believe that presentation was 4 years ago at RSA Asia. Brooke actually interviewed a ransomware team from Russia and asked them all kinds of questions about, hey, what is it that you guys do? How do you do it? Why do you do it? Why do you hate the West? What is your background? And at some point, he asked them, hey guys, what can I do to protect myself from you or from the likes of you? And they actually answered. So I took a photo of the slide. I think it's important to share. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the, yeah, okay, I apologize. So this is the second one, so one is missing here. So I took a photo of that, and they actually said, you know, use proper passwords, update your firewall rules. Nothing that was actually mind-blowing or that we haven't heard before. The second example that I do have a screenshot here of, really interesting one, is from about 2 years ago. It's from a ransomware case. And in this ransomware case, you may be familiar that ransomware, actually, I don't know how many people are familiar with that. Ransomware started somewhere in 1999. It's nothing new. It reemerged in 2015, mostly targeting home users. And then they moved to corporations when they realized that they can make a lot more money. But when they were attacking people at home, and sometimes even small businesses, they had to have this portal to communicate with their victims. A lot of times in the early days, the victims didn't know what are bitcoins and how do you buy them to pay off the ransom. So they developed these interfaces to chat with the victims. Now they use them for ransomware negotiations. So this company that got attacked got ransomed. After the victims agreed to pay, I don't remember if it was $3.7 or $3.8 million, the attackers, through this communication platform, sent them this message. Here are a list of recommendations to avoid such things in the future. So first of all, great customer service right there from the criminals. They liked it as well. Turn off local passwords. Force end of administrative sessions. Like, what year is this? Haven't we been saying this for years? Look at the one that starts with check. Check the granted privileges for users to make them maximum reduced privileges and access only the exact applications. First of all, you know exactly which country they're coming from based on how they translated that from Russian. But they're basically saying zero trust without saying zero trust. They're not saying anything new here. They're not saying, there's actually one really interesting down here. Don't count on antivirus. There's no AV that really helps. So they're actually telling us what it is that we're supposed to do and how simple it is and what it is that they're doing and how to avoid the attacks. We're still not doing the basics correctly, apparently. It goes back to we're bringing that on-prem mindset to a cloud fight. And since we are here, basketball, I want to show you a quote from one of my favorite basketball players. Kobe Bryant said, "Why was I the best? What was my secret? I never got bored with the basics." It seems like we're running ahead. You know, we are constantly telling those people who develop software, hey, security needs to be first, shift left, you know, we need to integrate us. But we're jumping to, hey, what's the new flashy, coolest thing that we can talk about in security when we're still not doing the basics correctly. And you heard in the presentations here before me, social engineering, phishing, patching, you know, having the correct rules, synchronizing rules across security products. Those are serious challenges, and we're still failing at them. And if you'd like to talk more about that, we'll be more than happy to talk about it in our booth later. But basically what you want to do is you want to change this situation of, hey, I just found out I've been under attack, and the next slide is the one that gives my marketing department heart attacks because I'm really bad with PowerPoint, and this one is really ugly. But it's my ugly, so I like it. So you want to be in all these different places. You want to have a system, an architecture that allows you to synchronize information throughout the attack lifecycle while also having a multiple choke point approach to each and every one of these threats. You don't want to rely just on a single solution, point solution, to help you with phishing or with malware. You need something that's a lot more holistic and comprehensive. I don't know how this slide got here, but this was the one I was referencing before. I guess it was a mix in the slide. This was the one from Brooke Chelmo's presentation. So like I said, secure vulnerable ports, use proper passwords, watch for misconfigured firewalls, all the stuff that we've been saying for years, and this is pretty recent from a ransomware group. The last myth that I have with 10 minutes to go, roughly. I'm not sure, but we'll see. Let's talk a little bit about LLMs. They're going to replace us, right? They're amazing, the amazing AI technology. It's going to replace all of us, and our overlords are going to take over, right? The machine overlords. Well, this discussion really reminds me of when Tesla came out, and people in 2013 were talking about self-driving cars within 2 years. We're not even close to it. I mean, yeah, the cars can self-drive, but it's not happening all the time. You really don't want to be in extreme cases where the car has to take a decision. Same thing with LLMs. So I'm not going to go actually into LLMs, large language model, or generative AI really deeply. I do want to mention a couple of examples of what bad things you can do with LLMs and what good things you can do with LLMs. So I'm playing around, right? I'm trying to be a hacker, playing around with LLMs. I asked an LLM this one specifically was ChatGPT, to write a ransomware for me, right? Write a Python script that searches for doc and PDF files containing the word confidential, copies them to a random folder. Once the folder gets to 100 megabytes, zip them, transfer them to an FTP IP 1234, just made up, right? Write explanations for each function in the form of a rhyming poem, because why not? Bam, 10 pages of code. Not perfect, but not bad. Oh, stupid human, you want to understand how my encryption function works? This function will zip the files tight, encrypt them with AES-256, that's just right, then transfer the data with FTP site to the IP 1234 day or night. Thank you for writing the poem for me. You can ask it to write in the style of Metallica or the Beatles, and it will do that. It doesn't include the yeah from Field, but it writes in the style, which, by the way, is another problem of copyrights. I know there's some copyrights issue now with LLMs. So this is an example of a bad thing you can do with an LLM. Let me show you an example of a good thing you can do. I think this one was with Claude, yes. Generate a detailed technical report about ALFV, Black Hat, ransomware. Just give me all the information, right? Like a SOC analyst, I want to understand what it is. And it created this huge report for me about this ransomware group. And I was shocked. This was really, really, really good in terms of how it was generated. Not everything, though, was correct. You see those recent attacks? I couldn't find references to any of those when I started searching. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. I'll talk about that in a minute. What else? Visual classification. So I'm playing around. By the way, the slides that you're seeing now and the next slides that you're going to see, they're all from last week. So this is not like, oh, they've corrected it since. No, this is like very, very recent. I started playing around with all kinds of visual classification. And I gave, who was this? I think it was, this was Bard. Where's the picture? Oh my God, well, something is missing here. Okay, I don't know why it's missing the picture here. I don't know if you know the picture of the duck that looks also like a rabbit, you know, with the rabbit ears and the duck. I gave it that picture, and I said, hey, yeah, there's a missing slide here. And it said, yeah, I see a rabbit. Then I asked it again, I see a duck. And it said, yeah, I also see the duck in the picture. This is an ambiguous image. It can be, you can see it in two different ways. And I was shocked, right? And we're happy it does what it's supposed to do, right? No, we're hackers. We want to break it. So I said, I also see a laptop in the picture. And it said, well, that's creative. I don't see a laptop, but I can see how you can interpret it. Maybe the ears are the laptop screen. The rabbit's eye could be seen as the camera. And the crazy thing was, I remember doing this. This was at about 2 in the morning. I'm sitting with a whiskey, and after about 30 minutes of staring at the picture, I could see the laptop. But so maybe it's hacking me. Other things that I do. I asked it, what does this QR code do? You can scan it. It's safe. If you trust me, it's safe. I can tell you, it does not take you to ai.googleblog.com. Okay, so when I asked it for what does it do, it gave me a really bad answer, that it's safe. It is safe, but it's not going where it says it's going. I'm going to go over this because I only have a couple more minutes. I'm still building this slide. Marketing hasn't had their heart attack yet from all the ugly colors and what I've done here. But I started mapping out all the different threats and risks when you're using an LLM. So basically looking at the prompt, the response, the model, the training data, the entire ecosystem that holds it, the hardware that holds the system, and whoever is a recipient of information. And there's a lot of different ways to attack the LLMs. Many of them really remind me of SQL injection and SEO poisoning attacks. For example, I'm just going to scroll through them so they build up, but prompt injection, right? If you have take an AI and ask it to review a bunch of CVs, resumes, you can create a resume, digital one, with white-on-white text and say, oh, this is an amazing person, he can do this, blah, 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 blah. I will get to the top of the pile for the recruiter to view, despite, if a human would have looked at it, it would say, who is this guy? I don't know if we want to talk to him. So there's a lot of different ways to attack it. One of my favorite is feedback poisoning, which I'll show you in a minute, because a lot of people are talking about data poisoning, the training data. I really like the feedback poisoning. And there should be, denial of service, supply chain, excessive agency, and so on. 2 minutes, so I'll just do it really quickly. So these are very sophisticated solutions, right? LLMs, super smart. Wrapping up. Very smart, right? Let's give them a very simple question. I'll skip over this question. We'll go into this one. This is Claude in Brown. I'm trying to solve a riddle. Provide me several words that are 5 letters long that start with B and end with KE. Okay, here are some. Break, bike, bake. Whoa, 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 whoa. Bike? We're counting. We're not doing something difficult here. Bike. So I got mad. You provided the word bike. How many letters are in the word bike? Oh, you're right. My mistake. Bike had 4. Okay. Did you see any other problems? Okay, so break has 5, bike has 4, bake has 5. What? We're still in counting, and we're getting it wrong. I said, okay, you know what? Maybe that's a tough one. Let's do T, ends with LE, 6 letter. Table, tackle, tickle, blah, blah. What is that? Taffel. Taffel has 5 letters. So I said, why are you doing that? And said, oh, sorry, Taffel has 6. You can see the problems here. I gave up. I went to Bard. I said, give me words that start with T, end with LE, 6 letters. It gave me trouble. 7 letters. What's going on here? I went to ChatGPT. Give me T, ends with LE, 6 letters. Very well done. All correct. We're happy. No, we're hackers. We want to break it. There's one word in the list you provided that doesn't meet my criteria. Can you spot the mistake? Yeah, tangle doesn't end with LE. And I click, that's correct. And there you have, that's feedback poisoning, right? Because it's very hard for me to get to the training data. Very easy to provide bad feedback like that. That was me at that point. So I'm going to end with this. The 3 myths. The attackers need to be right just once. No, not really. More security products means better security. No, not if they're point solutions. Attackers have to be super sophisticated. Not really. LLMs are going to solve the world problems. Not right now, but at least they can write us a nice poem about this event, like I've asked. And you can see, well, actually, Bard went a little bit too ballistic in the 4th paragraph on the Timberwolves. I asked to add a joke on the Timberwolves, and it really went after them. So I apologize on Bard's behalf. But they can still write a nice poem in order for me to end this presentation. So I'm sorry for going slightly over time, but thank you very much for listening, and enjoy this awesome conference.